Good evening. Welcome to It's About Time. We are studying tonight Job chapters 14 through 16. And we are in for a time in the Word. And this chapter, Job 14, sets us up to think about the meaning of life and how final death can be. Um, Although we know that there is a final for the believer, there is an afterlife for the believer. Verse 1, Job says, "Man who is born of woman is short lived and full of turmoil." Have you ever heard the phrase, life is short? Life is short. Job knows all too well how you can have everything or have the perception of having everything and end up where he is now as a reflection. Now, we last heard in Genesis where after the flood, God reduced the age of his people to 120 years old because man is human and had been sinful. So, we're thinking about how we are born and how we grow like a flower, and this is where we hope to live in God's purpose and our God purpose. And something I want us to think about, which we're studying tonight, our dash. We have the 1974 dash, however God allows me to live or us to live. What is going to happen at that time? And we seen that in funeral programs. What will our life contain? This lesson tonight, our dash will contain ups and downs. Job compares life to a shadow. If we are standing against a building, if you can visualize that, we will be able to look behind us and see our shadow until the sun hits the same spots, and then life is gone. Verse 3, you also open your eyes on him and bring him into judgment with yourself. Job is at a place of like, God, I know you see my situation. Please have mercy on me. Job knows that the Lord expects holiness and that no one can make themselves clean from being dirty except the Lord himself. And then in verse 6, look away from him so that he may rest until he fulfills his day like a hired man. Okay, Lord, you say how much time we have, but can you just let us work while it is day? And then let us who are weary have rest. So this is, we have to think about what we know from our previous chapters. This is the state of mind that Job was in. And then for ourselves, have you ever felt like, oh Lord, I'm okay. If you take me out of my misery right now, I'll be okay. But then verse 7, for there is hope for a tree when it is cut down, that it will sprout again, and it shoots up, it will not fail. Here Job is like, you see my dilemma, but I haven't bounced back. I still got these boils. My family's still lost. I lost my animals. I haven't bounced back yet. And I'm not feeling hopeful right now. I can remember feeling this way at a time in my life when I was unemployed and things were not going the way I felt that they should go. Even being under salvation, right? I'm like, Lord, where's the jobs at? And the bounce back was real. The bounce back did not happen when I thought it would. And in verse 10, but a man dies and lies prostrate. A person passes away. And where is he? Now, Job is down and out, and who cares about him? That is his thoughts. Who cares? His friends do not. We already know. We've heard these lessons, and those who watched replays on our previous 21st Century Watchmen, you will understand where we are in chapters 14 through 16. We've seen a visual of someone being in a casket. They're not raising up from the dead, even though we believe there's power to it. But in this lesson, they're not sprouting up again like that tree. when you see them in the casket, initially, mentally, that is final. Even those believers, we know that it's not final. Verse 13, Job says, oh, that you would hide me in Sheol, that you would conceal me until your wrath returns to you, that you would set a limit for me and remember me. This means that Job is saying, Lord, I'm cool with waiting under the earth, because that's what Sheol, Sheol, that's the place under the earth where if you were a sinner, that's where you would be. But if you went there still alive, that's where it's considered the place that you will be. He's like, I'm cool waiting under the earth where the dead are. That's until you're finished. I'm cool. Job says, I'm cool, Lord, with waiting in Sheol, the place where the dead is, in like a holding pattern, until you finish my tribulation phase. I'm cool with that. Lord, can you remember that I was holy? And I think about that, having those thoughts of, can you remember me? And then I think about one of our watchmen, our 21st century watchman teacher, Sister Lynette, speaking on not trying to get out of suffering. Job is like, okay, I'm not trying to get out of suffering, and I'm cool with being in this place until you're done with my trials. And it is more than a notion, though. Mahalia Jackson has a song that says, I'm going to wait until my change come. And Job is like, I'm going to wait, but I'm going to wait, but I'm going to wait because Lord, I need you to get this done with the things that you're trying to get me to go through. And I'm sure we've all had that, like, okay, when is this trial going to end? Lord, I can deal with you saying that we have to go through, that we have to suffer. You telling Satan, have you tried my servants? 21st century watchman, have you tried any one of them? But I'm like, okay, enough is enough. Job wants the Lord to love on him. He is expecting the Lord to take back what he has created. And it's such a visual in thinking about, okay, now that we've had an opportunity to do what the Lord has told us to do, we know that we're going to go back to dust. But this is such a reality in the state of tribulation that Job is dealing with. In verse 16, 17, for now you number my steps. You do not observe my sin. My wrongdoing is sealed up in a bag, and you cover over my guilt. Not taking the sin away, not pretending that it doesn't exist, but covering it. While the Lord knows how long and knew how long Job would be on the earth, he won't accept sin, and it is sealed up and covered by God. And think about ourselves. One's watching this, one's watching the replay, knowing that God covers us. He will still let us know how we can be better and asking for forgiveness, but he covers us. He does not leave us. And Job did not claim to be perfect. And that was what he wanted his friends to understand. He was not trying to blow smoke. He was really trying to, like, I get it. I'm not in this separate place from everyone else in the world. But he understood the reason. He understood where he was. Job mentions that the mountain can crumble and the water can wash away the soul because the Lord is over all of us. The Lord washes away the dirty parts. Job, verse 21, his sons achieve honor, but he does not know it, or they become insignificant and he does not perceive it. And that means that his children, you know how the word says that we're going to leave an inheritance for our children. But in Job's case, because of his suffering, he didn't know how long he would be here. And then his children are dead. And so to think about his sons, his children, how they would be honored, how they would be awarded, but Job would not be able to see it. And that was because of what he was dealing with, his pain. So I want us to really think about the thought process of how frail we are to this world, how our life is actually vanity. And here we are in chapter 15, Job's friend again. Here in chapter 15, we are dealing with Eliphaz. He's come back from verse 4, kind of the nicer person, but now it's not going to be cool at all. He cannot be silent. Sometimes, watchmen, as you see the logo, we're watching, praying, we're saying something. In this case, there should have been silence from this friend, if not encouragement. And silence can be golden. Verse 2, should a wise man answer with windy knowledge and fill himself with the east wind? Here Eliphaz is saying that Job is articulate, and because he has wisdom and is articulate, he shouldn't be saying this kind of stuff like he has a relationship with God. He shouldn't be gassing himself up as if God is in his situation. Why is Job going back and forth? And everything he has spoken thus far has not resulted in him being healed. What a good friend Job is, because your girl Eliphaz is like, you've been trying to convince us, but no, we are not feeling you. We do not. And that's what it comes down to. They just did not believe in their friend. Verse 4, indeed, you do away with reverence and hinder meditation before God. Eliphaz insinuates that Job does not reverence God and doesn't pray. Now, this is harsh considering this friend who knows Job. He has no idea how long Job has spent in his prayer closet. And this also made me think of how many times Daniel prayed a day. I think it was Felicia. Who saw him pray? How did that word get spread as it did? And we know he prayed 3 times a day. But this friend did not see Job in his prayer closet. And the thing, my thought to you today, people of God, have you heard this? Have you heard? Because I have heard, Felicia, you must not be praying hard enough. What does that even mean? What? But what you're not going to do is tell me I do not pray. If I can't do anything else, as well as 21st century watchmen, we are going to pray. Amen. Eliphaz tells Job he is playing himself. He's lying to himself. Can we imagine a friend who knows our life and tell us that we are lying to ourselves? I can't comprehend at this moment. There's one thing to hold us accountable, but there's another thing to be, as Sister Lynette said, to be shady. Verse 7, were you the first person to be born, or were you brought forth before the hills? Here Eliphaz is saying, Job, you think you know the thoughts of God? Ooh. Were you in the heavens when it was created? Oh, you know more than we know. Got it. Oh, Job knew that there wasn't a valid reason of his tribulations, although his friends differed with him, right? Because of what they're saying and accusing him and just trying to get him to say, this is what I did. But Job knew that there wasn't a valid reason for his suffering. Verse 11, are the constellations of God too little for you, or the words spoken gently to you? Now here, Eliphaz believes Job is not listening to them. He's like, you're not listening to your friends. With their wisdom, they were not listening to God. And so what it was, Job, you're not listening to us. And because we have wisdom and we believe that it comes from God, you're not even listening to God. My goodness. My goodness. Now, if we are truly saying what thus saith the Lord, there will eventually be a turnaround of the heart. And this is even our reality. And we won't have to worry about, does this person accept what I'm saying? Because if there's truly a turnaround in your heart, there's going to be a turnaround in your life. But Job doesn't deny his sinful tendency. And even Eliphaz says in verse 15, behold, he has no trust in his holy ones, and the heavens are not pure in his sight. God recognizes what is unholy, but Job recognizes God doesn't have confidence in him, although he asked Satan if he had tried him. He understands that there's no God is not going to hold on to a sin, but he also recognized that he's in a place where, why am I in this place? Eliphaz believed that if you did wrong, you would be punished. And this is where Job was. And Job was being punished because he was going against God. That was Eliphaz's reasoning. Um, like, Job, you are wise. Duh, you should know this. Hmm. Wow, he's calling Job a hypocrite. You went against God. Just say it. Because if you're intelligent, you can recognize you've done wrong and understand that because you've done wrong, you're supposed to suffer. Duh. Um, some friends who no understanding. He had no understanding. So, watchmen, let us attempt to have an understanding for others' suffering, as we too have suffered, or we will suffer. Eliphaz sees Job as one who had the riches and now is suffering. Verse 30, he will not escape from darkness. The flame will dry up his shoot, and he will go away by the breath of his mouth. This means that a rich person only gets so far until their destiny is God's vengeance. Now, Eliphaz is correct in those in saying and talking about those who go after wealth, and they will fail, according to Proverbs 11 and 28. The person who trusts in his wealth will fail. Poor Job. More accusations given to him, as in verse 34. For the company of the godless is barren, and fire consumes the tents of the corrupt. Job had to be corrupt and shouldn't expect to thrive because he must be disconnected from the Father. Whew. Now, Job is being compared to the rich man who ended up in hell. Think about that. By Eliphaz saying this, Job is being compared to that man, which we'll hear about when we get to the New Testament. And in chapter 16, we're here where Job comes back. He comes with the clap back. His friends did not say anything to help gain additional insight that would help his plight. Chapter 15, nothing new for him, nothing new to help encourage him. Job calls them miserable comforters. Let's think about that for a moment. Are these friends who have contentment in their life? I think about being younger, being in class. I come back home, I'm like, mom, dad, they talked about me. They said harsh things to me. I was bullied, and the parents would say, well, they're jealous of you. Like, that doesn't make sense. But we got to think about this for a moment. What has happened in their own life that has caused them to bring a reproach or condemnation on Job? What has happened? And that's something, watchman, 21st century, when we're ministering, we're thinking about, and if we get attacked or we've had this in our life, we have to think about what that person has had to deal with, and that's going to be what makes us even more prayerful. In verse 5, or I could strengthen you with my mouth, and the condolence of my lips could lessen your pain. Job is saying, if the shoe was on the other foot, I would tell you words to encourage you and to lighten your pain. This is what I wanted to. That's Job. Oh, Job. I want to let you know I wanted that too. It doesn't make a difference if Job speaks or not because his pain will not change. So we have those that suffer out loud, and we have those that suffer in silence. For Job, however you looked at it on the scale, it was not going to change his pain. In verse 7, it says, "But now he has exhausted me. You have laid waste all my group of loved ones," which here Job talks about how God has taken out his family and how he is suffering. When we suffer, the hope is that we have one surrounding us that love us, that will build us up, that will encourage us. The friends Job had around him only tore him down. And here also, even with chapter 15 and talking about the quality of life, but here Job can only look to God. Verse 11, God hands me over to criminals and tosses me into the hands of the wicked. Job calls his friends criminals. Job is trying to live in peace, but says he has been broken into pieces. Verse 13, his arrows surround me. He splits my kidneys open. My God, without mercy. He pours out my bile on the ground. Thank God I didn't eat before I taught this word. This is a nauseous feeling of being alone, and not even God is relief. What a visual for us. He says that God has just poured out a consistent stream of wrath against him. Verse 15, I have sewed sackcloth over my skin and thrust my horn in the dust. Job has shown the sign of true repentance, which was, we'll learn about even more, where they had the sackcloth and wept as a sign of forgiveness, even though there was no sin there. But some people can suffer in silence, but Job was not one of those people. Have you had the thoughts of, Lord, if you can just tell me what I did, I will change. I'll get it right. Job knows that his actions are not the result of suffering. Ooh, now that's a word. Can we get to that place where we are just going through? In verse 19, even now, behold, my witness is in heaven, and my advocate is on high. Now, wait a minute. Where Job spoke earlier about what God had done to him, he knows that God is the only one who sees everything and is for him. God is our true advocate when man fail us or not meet our expectations. Our last verse 22, for when a few years are past, I shall go the way and not return. Job believes that the time will come when he will die and will no longer suffer. This is a journey we will all have to go through. And it's something that I want us to remember in our continuous study. Don't forget to subscribe to 21st Century Watchmen. Every day we will be, it's about time for the word. God bless you and good night.